we can recruit and encourage and support more female coaches across the county and across the game. So we're going to look at some of the things around the barriers that female coaches tend to face in getting into coaching. We're then going to try and give you some practical tips on how you can try and encourage and support more female coaches. And we'll also look at the support that's available from us as a county FA as well, of how we can help support with that. So that's what we're going to go through tonight. Like we said, we're going to record this so we can share it and put it there for lots more people to see. We'll have some time at the end for Q&A. So if you hold any questions until the end, and then we'll have some time where we can go through, and then we'll speak about the next steps at the end. So yeah, thanks, Laura. Hopefully recording, and we'll start going. So bit of background to start with. So why are we doing this workshop, this webinar, and why do we need more female coaches? So I think the first thing is to look at where we are today. So currently we have 410 female coaches across Cheshire as a county. Now, when I first looked at it, I thought that's not bad. That's quite a decent amount of female coaches across the county. But then when you consider that we've got nearly 7,500 coaches across the county as an entirety, it then starts to change the picture a little bit. And when we look at that as a proportion, we see that actually only 6% of our coaches across the county are female coaches. And that's a picture we see across the country, across every level of the game. In terms of percentage, we're probably slightly higher than some places, but still there's a lot of work to do in terms of looking at how we can help to recruit and support more female coaches. If we compare that to the percentage of people playing the game, it's around 15% in Cheshire of females playing the game of football. So again, we can see that there's opportunity there clearly to try and encourage and support for more female coaches. I think this is also a bit of a quote from Bex, who's the FA National Coach Development Lead for the National FA. Again, not going to go through this in word for word, but basically it's also about looking at how we can create those opportunities for coaches. So one of the things that's important is, particularly when we're thinking about the female game, is creating those role models. So all the young girls that are out there playing football or on the sidelines watching football can see that coaching is a role for them and for females when they get older. And particularly in the grassroots game, what we're really keen is to offer the opportunity to every woman and girl that wants to take the first steps into coaching to be able to do so. So we're looking at how we can help them to develop the confidence, a sense of belonging, and feel that they're supported within the female game. So that's basically why we're looking at this and why we're trying to put things into place to encourage more females into coaching across the county. But I think much more important than hearing me talk about that is to hear from some of our young players. So we've recorded a couple of videos to hear what some of our young players think about having female coaches. So if I just let this play, hopefully you'll be able to hear it.
Why do you like having a female coach?
I look up to them and they make me confident and be like how I act in the future.
Good stuff.
Abby, what's good about having a female coach?
It's nice to come to training and it not just be a male environment.
Emily, what's good about having a female coach?
It's nice to come to training and have a female role model to connect to.
Mamie, what's good about having a female coach?
It's nice to come to training and have a female role model.
Girls, what's good about having a female coach?
It makes football more fun.
So hopefully that just gives you a very quick insight into what some of our players think. And it's a theme that we hear quite often when we speak to players about, having different voices, different opinions, having female coaches on the sidelines. And again, it's not just about the female game as well. We're looking to encourage more females across the entire game. And I think something else that where we had was something that Liz is just going to talk to us about a little bit. If I jump onto the next slide, where we had somebody who's probably a little bit too camera shy, weren't they, Liz? But what to write a note to share her experiences with having female coaches. So Liz, if I can just give you a few minutes to talk through this one.
Yeah, this little girl, well, she's 12. She's had a tough start in life. Really, she comes and she plays within our pan disability team. And when she first joined, she wouldn't look up, she wouldn't speak to anybody. She was really shy, not going anywhere near the ball. So when I said to her about this, I was like, I need somebody to do me a little thing. How do you fancy it? And she was like, I can't write it. I don't want my face, Liz, and I can't do that. She said, but I'll write it down for you. So she wrote this little note, and, they give me confidence, encouragement and confidence. They are more friendly. It's nice to have more women around. I think this one's probably the best. they're better at football. Now, I thought, she's a little star, bless her. But this little girl, when she came to us, as I say, no confidence whatsoever. Now we play in a Pan Disability tournament. She's one of our best players. She loves man marking. She gets stuck in. And, her carers have said what a difference it's made to this girl to be able to come and join in and play football with the support of our female coaches around her.
Thanks, Liz. That's amazing. Like we say, at the end of the day, the players are why we all do it. So, as volunteers, as coaches, it's all about the players. So I think it's nice to hear from their perspective as well, the impact that some of these things can have on them. And then the next part, then we're going to have a look at some of the barriers to female coaches. So for this, we're going to speak to Liz as a Q&A. So Liz, I don't know if you want to just give us a quick sort of 2-minute intro to your background before we go into Q&A, just for the people on the call that maybe haven't met you before.
Okay, yeah, Liz Clark. I'm the Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Sandbach United. Been involved with girls football for about 15 years. So as it was mentioned, I'm the ambassador for equality. So I'm getting out there trying to promote girls football. If anyone ever needs any help, you can just give me a bell face to face, so I can come over and see you. I'm also a disability ambassador as well. So I do go out and try and get more sessions run for that.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Liz. So into the Q&A then. So first things first, do you want to give us an insight into how did you begin your own coaching journey, and how did you get into coaching yourself to begin with?
Okay, I think when I say this, a lot of you are going to think, oh God, that's the same as me. That's the same thing that happened to me. When I first started, my daughter started playing football. The club were looking for volunteers to manage my daughter's team. Husband stepped forward. He did his badges and started coaching. As usual, I started to help out and did the admin and match day stuff, became involved, and then thought, I can do this as well. So did my coaching badges. When my daughters came of age, they both did their coaching badges. And one of my greatest achievements was doing my level 2, my UEFA C. I did that with my eldest daughter. I thought I was a cool mum, but I'm not sure she thought that. I think I was probably a bit embarrassing, but they all called me mum by the end of the course. So, and then got into Wildcats, disability sessions and ladies social teams. So yeah, started off from just being somebody who was watching on the sidelines, and really football's my life now.
Excellent. Thanks, Liz. So then the next part then, what are some of the barriers that you, or maybe some of the coaches you've worked with, have faced?
Yeah, I think a lot of self-doubt. I think, we might not be the next Alex Ferguson, but neither are the men. I just think we have so much to offer. You don't have to be a great footballer to be a good coach, because that was what worried me. I was also worried about not being fit enough. Didn't think I knew enough about football, didn't have football skills. But I think now a friendly face who listens and acts accordingly is worth far more to those girls that are playing, and someone to look up to.
Perfect. And is that something as well, because obviously in your role you work with a lot of coaches, is that something that they face as well in terms of barriers? Is it a similar story, or do you hear different things from different coaches?
I think it is. I think we all feel that we're being watched all the time, and there's so many men coaches, but I think that's the same for men and women, because when you're a coach, the parents are all watching you, so it doesn't matter whether you're male or female, you're under scrutiny when you are a manager or a coach. But I think what you've got to remember is that we're doing this, we're all volunteers, we're stepping forward. It's all right staying on the sideline, you can whisper away, but we're actually doing something about it.
Brilliant, thanks, Liz. And I think we just touched on there, and I think we saw on the first slide, and obviously we know that football historically is a male-dominated environment. So you just touched on that briefly, but is there anything within stepping into a male-dominated environment that kind of affects your sort of confidence or your thoughts in getting into coaching?
Yeah, I think you just feel scrutinised, you really do. You feel that people are watching every move, or maybe a female coach isn't as good as a male coach and all the rest of it. But as I say, I think at the end of the day, we all have our roles to play.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the key thing as well, and we'll touch on it a bit later, is that, we're obviously want to encourage and support more female coaches, but that doesn't mean, we're trying to limit or restrict male coaches or get rid of them. I think it's like, say, it's that balance of having a mixture, isn't it? With different viewpoints and things like that. So I think with that in mind, then, what was the hardest part for yourself in terms of taking your first steps into coaching?
Mine was getting my daughters to understand that I was serious about it and that I wouldn't embarrass them. I think they were like, oh my God, Mum, no. But as I said, I think they're probably my biggest fans now. I think they love it. Doing the course was fine. I really enjoyed that because it was an all-female course. lots of people in the same position. And it's really funny because even though it was like 10, 12 years ago since we've done it, we still do keep in touch with them. We see people around, we're like, oh, hi, how are you doing? So it is quite a community. I think that's the, that's the good thing. And the hardest bit really was when you do your first match, because you do feel that everybody's watching you, and you're panicking a bit because, oh, if I get that wrong and whatever, but it really doesn't matter. You're there, you're giving your all, and you're giving your best for them girls to play football or boys to play football. It doesn't matter. So as I say, I think that's the biggest thing, but you have to remember that whoever's coaching is going to be watched, and people are always never going to agree with you all the time. But you're doing it for the kids and you're doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think anybody that's involved with football will know that, football's a matter of opinion, isn't it? There's no right or wrong way of doing things. And I think, sometimes we forget that a difference of opinion is okay. Just touched on one of the things you mentioned there. So you mentioned your level 1 course, I think it was, that you did as a female only course. Now, we'll talk about later in the webinar about some of the things we've got in place to support female coaches. And some of that is around, running female only workshops and things like that. Something that comes up quite often is a question about, the kind of, is there a need for female only sort of workshops and courses? But what's your experience of kind of, having that opportunity to do a female only course versus maybe having to go and do a course where you're the only female in the room? Is that something you could talk to us about?
Yeah, I think the first, your level 1 or your introduction to football, whatever it's called now, that first one, I think it was really important for me to be with other females who are in the exact same position. So you weren't getting any star coaches coming in. Everyone was in the exact same position, so you felt comfortable, and if you did something wrong, so what? Everybody does things wrong. But when I did my level 2, my UEFA C, when I did that, it was different because I'd already got some coaching experience, and it was male and female on that course, but I didn't feel any less than the male coaches. It's like I say, I think everyone's got different experiences to offer.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really interesting point you just make there. So, like, say your first steps of taking that first course might have been quite daunting, but when you've had a couple of years' experience, then going on to UEFA C with a mixture of coaches, once you've got that confidence, probably feels a bit different, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we find as well, that a lot of female coaches I work with, both through my role as a community champion, as a mentor, that once they've taken those first few steps onto the pitch and got into it and built some confidence, they then tend to stick with it. I think it's that just taking those first few steps that we sometimes need to support, don't we? And maybe it's worth just maybe if you've got a couple of minutes, just to talk about the couple of new coaches we've got at your club that we've done some work with.
Yeah. Okay. So we've just done the stepping over the sidelines, and we had 4. I think we had 4 people from Sandbach on that. And straight away, one of them, well, all of them actually, are all starting to ask questions. They've done the first step. One of them actually took her first coaching session on Wednesday, which she wanted some help with. So I was there as her kind of first aid and the safeguarding and all the rest of it. I was there as her person, and she was absolutely amazing, and she loved it. She can't wait to get all the courses done now. So that went really well. And some of the other people that we've got involved at the club, we have got quite a few female coaches, and it's like running Wildcats. One of our ladies runs Wildcats, Emma, and she's doing an amazing job there. And I think that's inspiring other people to get involved.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think obviously I was involved in that course as well. I think there's a couple of things for me. One was, the 3 or 4 coaches that actually went out and delivered their very first session. Initially, they were feeling quite nervous about it. They were quite worried about how it was going to go. But the first thing they all said after delivering was that it went much better than they expected. They really enjoyed it. And I think the one that you mentioned actually delivered her first session the day after her kind of practice one, which was really good. And then I think then, like you say, with Emma, who I think has been involved with the club for a bit longer, is now kind of taking the steps from, not just being a coach, but now encouraging more female coaches and kind of being a sort of a face for female coaching in the club, which again is, is really, really inspiring, really interesting to see, that people kind of, start out with their first step into coaching and in a couple of years' time and then kind of branch out into doing more and more with the club, which is really good to see. Cool. Thanks a lot, Liz. Really interesting there to kind of hear your viewpoint in kind of how you got involved with coaching and some of the barriers that you faced. We also run as well across Cheshire. We run a female coach development group, and we ask them as well. What do they think? Some of them are a bit too shy to go on camera and record, so we've got some quotes from them. So again, just going to pick a few of these out. So just to explain before we go into it, so the sort of lighter blue quotes on the top left, they were looking at what female coaches felt prevented them from initially getting involved in football as a coach. The darker navy blue is then what barriers they felt they faced, and then down at the bottom in red is some kind of input from them on what would have made them get involved in coaching sooner. So it's really interesting that whenever we speak to people and thinking about what Liz has just shared with us, we always come across the same kind of topics, the same kind of themes, which is really interesting. So I think one of them is that kind of initial lack of confidence. I think we've got to kind of recognise that generally playing experience with females is less than with males. So sometimes people can think I've not been a professional or semi-professional footballer, or I've not played football all my life, so therefore I can't be a coach. And we do have to acknowledge that. I think also then is that concern again of if you're the only female coach at a club, or you're one of only a few female coaches, that kind of feeling like there's more of a spotlight on you, worrying about what people think about you, and the perception people have of you is really important. And I think the other side as well is kind of not seeing as many female coaches. Quite often when I've spoken to coaches that I work with and asked them why they've not got involved earlier, quite often the feedback is that they didn't know that they were able to do it. So because if they're seeing that it's generally male coaches on the sidelines, they don't kind of know that they could do it as well. So again, it's that kind of lack of visibility. When we then start looking at some of the barriers, so again, like I say, very similar to what we said about what prevented people getting involved. So hopefully this can kind of show sometimes why it can be difficult to get involved. I think things like saying it's been quite daunting, worried about not being taken seriously, not having people to guide them and support them. Quite often people avoid approaching the male coach or assuming that the male coach is the lead and they're just there to help. And then again, like we say, if you're the only female coach at a club or with a team, again, it can be difficult to find that support and help you need. And then just looking at the bottom about some of the comments we had about, what they felt would have helped them get involved sooner. So, having more support, whether that's from a club or a county level, knowing that support is available. Teams being more approachable, having more women as coaching role models. So again, I think the experience we tend to get is once you get a few people involved and people start to see that they could do it as well, you then tend to get more. I think what we're also seeing now is, we'll touch on this a bit later, is sort of particularly girls that are playing that are getting to under 15, 16s, maybe starting to get into youth teams at under 17s and 18s, and now starting to want to get involved in coaching with the younger teams of the Wildcats. So we're now seeing those sort of players that have maybe played their whole life now looking to get into coaching as well, which is really interesting because they see more female coaches on the sidelines and see that they could do it as well, which is really important. I think a couple of other things as well, that knowledge of the game, having encouragement and confidence to learn. And I think personally that learning the sort of technical aspects of football is much easier than trying to develop the kind of softer skills that you need to be a good coach or a good volunteer. And the final thing I think that was really important was that quite often people aren't aware of how much support or how many other female coaches there are at clubs and at counties. So again, being able to highlight and share that information in terms of the support that's out there, I think is really important in overcoming some of these barriers. So like I say, we've looked at there a little bit of background of why we're looking at more female coaches, a little bit of insight from players, and then a bit of insight from coaches on the barriers they face. So one of the things that we kind of sort of really kind of aware of is that, we have talked about some of the barriers that female coaches face. And we need to think about sometimes the extra support that we need to put in place when people face additional barriers. So we know obviously a lot of clubs, a lot of people are open to having female coaches, and if a female coach steps forward and says they want to kind of get involved, that people will encourage and support that. But some of the things we sometimes need to think about is if there are barriers in place, what can we do to help overcome those barriers? What extra levels of support and encouragement do we need to put in place to kind of sort of really encourage and support more female coaches? And that's what we're going to look at now. We're going to look at some practical tips on how you as a club can do that. So just going to run through some of these ideas, and then we're going to share some more information from some other coaches as well. So one of the things, I think, Liz, this was a point that you made quite often. So if we're looking at how do we find, identify and encourage more female coaches, I think one of the key things is getting to know the parents early on in their journey with the club with you. So that might be when their kids start in the soccer schools or the Wildcats. It may be when potentially their son or daughter takes up football at an older age and then gets involved with your club. But getting to know the parents and getting to understand them, I think, is a really important point. I think also particularly with the female coaches, and this is probably more generic as well, is that looking to sort of proactively identify female coaches, I think, is an important point. And again, that's not about just looking for somebody that might have done coaching or played football, has experience, but looking out for those transferable skills and those other things that are important in a coach. So if we think about things like somebody that's patient, somebody that's caring, somebody that's organised, somebody that's good at communicating, helping players learn, all really, really important things as a volunteer, as a football coach, that we can look out for as well. And I'll share an example from my own work of that as well. Of a few years ago, working with Wildcats and trying to get more female coaches involved. I remember a certain occasion where we decided to do a little 3v3, 4v4 tournament at Wildcats one week. So as you can imagine, trying to sort of manage 3 or 4 teams of kids running around everywhere, being a bit chaotic, was quite difficult. And I remember there being an occasion where I think one of the young Wildcats had sort of fallen over and banged herself a little bit. And I remember looking over and seeing one of the mums looking after her. So when the games had finished, I just went over and was speaking to her and assumed it was her daughter. I was talking to her and she said, "Oh no, it's not my daughter. I just saw her fall over and that she was upset. So, I just stepped in to help her out because I don't think her parents were here." So straight away, as soon as I saw that, I was thinking, right, that's somebody that I want to get involved as a coach. So again, it's looking for those transferable skills. And then from that point, it's about being proactive, encouraging the coaches, discussing it with them, why you think they'd be a good coach. I think sometimes it's a very different message from saying, who wants to be a coach, to actually, actively saying to somebody, I think you'd be good at this for this reason. Here's the supports available. Would you like to get involved? Would you like to try it out? So I think that for me is that proactive element of actually identifying and encouraging coaches. I think also we touched on it a little bit, but helping them to see that it's not about technical football knowledge as well. I think showing about what an actual coach means. And sometimes I think, not necessarily framing it as a coach as such. When we say coach, we sometimes think of, a Premier League manager on the sidelines, shouting at the team, doing the tactics, all that things. But we all know that in grassroots football, a volunteer coach is very different to that. And I think we mentioned it earlier as well, but there's so many resources out there to help you learn the sort of technical football knowledge. Lots of support from the FA on YouTube, courses to learn it. And I think also people have been on the sidelines watching the children for a couple of years are always amazed at how much they actually know about the game, even though they don't. And it always surprises me when people tell me that they don't know about football, but you'll kind of speak to them about it and you'll see them on the sidelines to see that actually they probably don't realise just how much they have learned about the game from watching the children play. And I think for me as well, it's that also looking at, do we change from asking who wants to be coached to actually identifying good coaches and then encouraging them through their journey. The second part then in terms of practical tips, I think is looking at, how to provide those opportunities and how do we support female coaches. So I think one of the things is, again, maybe, sort of framing the roles that a coach doesn't necessarily mean somebody that has to jump straight into the deep end, taking the team for training every Wednesday, being there every match day. I think it's important that we talk about other roles. It may be coming on board as an assistant to gain some experience, but also seeing if they like it. I think that's also a really good opportunity to learn from other coaches and see what coaching's like before getting further involved. In my experience, most people that start as an assistant, eventually then want to take their own team and want to step up. So I think that's, again, a very sort of good way of getting people involved without it being suddenly jumping in the deep end. I think the other thing as well is also thinking about, can we be flexible with the opportunities we offer? So I always think that, football coaching doesn't have to be with a team. If you're running your little soccer schools, maybe you've got social recreational teams, maybe you run Wildcats or Squad Girls programs. Those are really good programs for coaches to start off getting involved with. I think for a couple of reasons. I think one, it's a bit different to a team. There's not as much expectations on people, I think, in terms of being there for every week. So I know quite a few centres that may have 5, 6, 7 coaches, but not all those coaches are there every week. So it gives you more flexibility in terms of being able to kind of, step in and fit it around your life. I think letting people coach in pairs and teams as well is a really good way of doing it. So quite often feedback we get is that, they don't feel like they can commit. And by stepping forward as a coach, you don't want to kind of say you'll do it and then let people down by not being there. So, having a pair or a team to coach, and I think is really good from that aspect. But also then, having somebody to kind of talk to support you, to work together, to share ideas with, is really important. And then 2 other things on that, I think, again, looking at how you can link in with other female coaches at the club. So, if you've got somebody that's maybe just started or been doing it for a while, and you've got new people that are interested, how can you kind of sort of create a mini network in the club? And it may be just a matter of introducing people. It may be having a WhatsApp group. It may be, having an opportunity for informal social interactions and things like that. But, looking at how you can link those people across the club. And then also connecting them with the FA support programs that we run. So we'll touch on those shortly. But again, I think just encouraging people to engage with those programs, letting them know what they are, is a really good way of supporting coaches as well. And there's just a few other points that I wanted to kind of call out as well. So we touched on it earlier, but a really good sort of source for getting new coaches. And we've seen this at a lot of clubs. And I know, Liz, you've seen this at yours, and we'll potentially talk about it in a minute. But if you've got those older ages at your club, I think it's a good opportunity to go and try and get them involved in coaching as well. So they can start doing things like the Playmaker course. They can access the supports available from 14 plus. So when they get into under 15s and 16s, it's a really good opportunity to try and get some of those players involved in your coaching as well. Whether that's with younger teams that maybe they've got siblings in, maybe it's coming to Wildcats and helping out with that. I think that's a really good opportunity. But also for them as well, at that age, they're going to be starting to think about doing things like Duke of Edinburgh, potentially looking at college and university. How does volunteering support with those university applications? But also as well, potentially as a future career, whether that's as a coach or other areas in football, you can then start to support them along their journeys with their coaching qualifications and badges. So that's a really good area to get people involved in. I think another one as well is whether you've got an open age or a social team at your club. Quite often we find that, somebody may come and play football, particularly when it's a social or recreational team. They might come and play football with a team, but maybe not be aware of, what else happens at the club. So we've had a couple of examples of where we've had female players come along to events and they've not realised that there's a big youth section, a junior section at their club. That they could get involved with coaching. So again, that's an opportunity to go out and speak to those open age teams and see if they're aware of the opportunities to get involved at your club. Another one as well is to look at having sort of a female coach ambassador or a girls development officer, somebody that has a role within the club, whether that's an informal role or a role as part of the committee, that actually then goes out and looks for female coaches, but engages and supports the ones that already exist at the club. And again, that doesn't necessarily have to be somebody that's actually actively mentoring and developing coaches. It may be as simple as linking them in with some of the events that are run elsewhere and those kind of things. But almost being that sort of face for female coaches within your club. And then another thing is we have this phrase that we use quite often: see it to be it. And I think it's really important to highlight female coaches that are at the club and that the work they're doing. So again, it may be that, if somebody's involved with one particular age group or one particular team, other people might not necessarily see that. So, shining a light on the fact that you've got other female coaches and the work they're doing, I think is really important. And then again, we asked the female coach development group that we run what they think in terms of any practical tips that, that could help other female coaches get involved. So again, without going through all these in particular detail, just to call out a few of these that we think are important. So I think, we touched on it on the previous slide, but, it's about creating accessibility and having role models. If you see more women involved within the sport, then, more women and more females are more likely to get involved. Again, similar, advertising the fact that you've got female coaches at the club, being encouraging to women, giving them a hand and support to get involved, linking them in with the support that's out there via places like the local FA. the Stepping Over the Sidelines course that we're going to talk about in a minute is a really good introduction. And we always get real positive feedback from the coaches that have done this, that kind of helps them to take those first steps and have that confidence to go out there and coach. And I think a really important one for me that, again, I hear quite often is down on the right-hand side, that, actually going and proactively asking people to do it. Quite often we get feedback that some coaches feel that if a message comes out, they don't actually realise that they can step up and do it. Again, if they see that it's male coaches, that if it's dads that are stepping up all the time, that sometimes people have the perception that they're not able to do it. So again, just kind of being sort of really clear that actually you could do this and you would be good at it. Is another thing that we can look at as well. So like I say, that's from us some sort of practical tips in terms of how you can look to encourage and support more female coaches. Liz, did you want to share a few things that you've done or your club have done with these kind of things?
Yeah, I think you've covered most of it really in the slide before and whatever. But yeah, I always think the Wildcats is definitely a good one because there's no pressure on them there. So if they want to get involved, if mums or carers, whatever, want to get involved, it's good to just go and help out with the session, and then you can find out if you really like it. But also what tends to happen then, those coaches, those mums or whoever's joined in, they then tend to take that team then onto under 8s and they get more involved. And once you started and once you're in it, that's it then. You go from, jump leaps and bounds, really. It really, really is good. The other one we're saying about the young girls, I have a lot of under 15 girls that help me with disability football, but also with Wildcats and with other teams. And that's really good because you say Duke of Edinburgh, but also some of them are now starting to look at careers, in football, maybe teaching and that kind of thing, and other careers in football, because now, because of the, how popular women's football is, there are those opportunities out there. So it really is. You're giving them that little taste, and they'll go on. But it's just giving them a bit of confidence, really, and being there for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's that point again. You just say it's that first confidence, isn't it? And we see it all the time. That and it's the same with everything. You'll get some coaches will start, and then it doesn't kind of maybe it's not for them or life gets in the way. But I would say the vast majority of coaches, it's that first steps, isn't it? Once they kind of take those first steps onto the grass, they kind of develop that love for the game, and in a few years' time, they sort of stepping up to be a development officer, and then eventually probably being like yourself, Liz, involved in the club from all different aspects. So I think if we can encourage people and help them with those first steps, that's kind of the key thing, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it gives them a sense of belonging as well. And I've got to tell you, those under 15 coaches, they're the first ones there every week. They really are. They love feeling part and feeling responsible because the little ones look up to them. It's really lovely. Yeah,
and I think the thing that's interesting there as well is that obviously the little ones. So if you're a 10-year-old and you've got a 15 or 16-year-old coach, to them, that's a real role model, something to look up to. But they're also close enough in their age to kind of be able to sort of engage and understand them more, remember what they went through at their age and things like that. So I think from that aspect, having somebody that's kind of a lot closer to you in age, I think is a really good thing. And I remember again doing a Wildcat session. I remember the team I was coaching at the time, and they must have only been like under 12s, under 13s, but when their game had finished, they'd come over in their kits. And I remember these sort of 7, 8, 9-year-olds kind of Wildcats were looking up at them like they were, superstar footballers in the kits. And the question was always, oh, when can we join a team? When can we get the kit? And it's, again, you don't always necessarily notice those things, do you? But I think, again, that sort of element of being a role model and being someone to look up to is really important. So I think it's really good to get those involved at that stage as well. So like I say, yeah, some practical tips there. I think the other thing, some of the things we've probably not touched on so much there is, you may be potentially at your club, you may have already done a lot of this stuff. You may be already gone out and spoke to the parents, and you're struggling to get female coaches involved. Maybe your older teams, maybe you don't have teams of that age just yet, or the players of that age aren't able to get involved with coaching. So a couple of other things in terms of looking for female coaches are looking outside the club as well. So I would say that 80 to 90% of your coaches are going to come from within your club. But in terms of looking outside, so quite what we've done is most councils will have a volunteering and not specific to football, but a sort of generic volunteering team. So I know those that are based in the Greater Manchester boroughs that they particularly do have that. And those are really good places to advertise. Whenever I've advertised on there, I always get a lot of interest from people that have maybe played the game, potentially gone off to university, and then they see the opportunity to get involved as a coach and they're interested to do that, but they may not have links with the club, or they may not know where to get started. So again, engaging with people outside of your club is a really good thing to do. You may also have an open age team in your area that doesn't have a youth section. So again, that might be a potential area, particularly if they've got a youth or a development team, to potentially, try and identify new coaches. So I know there's a couple of areas where, we've gone and approached teams that don't have a youth section to look at bringing coaches in to work with local grassroots teams, youth setups and wildcats. So again, that's something that can be looked at as well. Potentially also looking at things like universities. So if you've got a university in your area, quite often they will have either social football teams, or some may even have sort of football courses where you may potentially be able to find coaches. So there's all kinds of areas where you can identify coaches if you can't find them in your club as well. So I think again that's something for us to think about, and an area where we can support as well. So then if we obviously just touched on the support available, what we can then do is show some of the things that we run as a county as well. So Laura, I don't know if you want to talk about the female coach development group. This is something you obviously do a great job of running and are heavily involved with. Don't know if you want to talk about that, or do you want me to share some information on that?
Yeah, I'll speak about the female coach development group. So yeah, this is a group that Cheshire FA run in association with the FA, and we've got a fantastic coach developer that will come and run face-to-face and online workshops for female coaches who are looking for additional support. So it doesn't really matter what qualification they've got, as long as they've sort of started their journey. Then the next event's on the 21st of January with Gemma Bonner. If you know any female coaches within your club that may be interested, we've also got a WhatsApp group as well. So any new webinars or anything that comes up, any opportunities or mentoring, stuff like that will go in that group chat then, and then they can go ahead and sign up for the event. We've got a really fantastic community. We've recently they've all got female coach development group t-shirts now as well, but it's a really good place for them to connect with other coaches as well. So if they haven't got that network of female coaches within their club, there's a really strong group of about 20 to 25 female coaches that we've got attending most of our events. So if you know anyone that may be interested in that, just drop me an email. My email's on the screen if you don't know it already. But it's a fantastic group to get involved with. The stepping over the sidelines, Alan, I'll let you speak about that a little bit, just because you lead on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Laura. I think that coach development group, it's really good to see there's obviously coaches I've worked with taking their first steps into coaching, and now seeing them being a kind of active part of that coach development group, going on to the UEFA and really sort of flourishing. So it's good to see that pathway of, again, we've mentioned it a couple of times, but once people get involved, they almost get the bug, don't they? And then start getting involved more and more. But I think also that coach development group, like you say, it's that opportunity to engage with other coaches, to network, to meet other people from around the county. And I think what's good with that is that, you don't just run it out of Northwich. I think we've had events at Altrincham, Vauxhall Motors, been to Macclesfield, haven't you? There's the next one in Stockport, potentially, but you kind of go all around the county, don't you, with those as well? So, giving the opportunities for people that, we obviously know it's a big county and it's difficult to travel across it when you're giving up your free time, and you're obviously volunteering as coach as well. So it's good that kind of gets spread around the county. I think you also do some virtual events, don't you, as well, to make it more accessible?
Yeah, so that's going to be the next one on the 21st of January, for as it's winter and people might not want to go outside as much, that we put the next one online. So yeah, that one's going to be a fantastic event. We also had a brilliant one just last month as well with a Cheshire female coach, Rachel Lever, and the feedback that we get from those sessions, whether it's online or face to face, we always get some really fantastic feedback from them that it's really helped support them on their journey. So yeah, like I said, if you do know anyone who may find those sessions beneficial that doesn't know about them yet, just drop me an email and I can pop them on the list for the next event.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Laura. That's great. So yeah, the next part is you just touched on it briefly, but we run a Stepping Over the Sidelines workshop. So this is something that I'm heavily involved in delivering as part of my role. But the idea with this is again, like we've mentioned, trying to encourage more coaches to take those first steps onto the grass and into coaching. So we do this this season as a 2-part workshop. So one part of it is sort of a theory workshop where we look at, what are the skills and the qualities of a good coach. And the idea with that is trying to sort of help people to build that confidence that a lot of the skills and knowledge they've got from their daily lives is really transferable and applicable to a role as a volunteer football coach. So we do a lot of work there of kind of helping potential coaches to build a confidence. So those are sort of female coaches that are brand new to the game. People may come along to that as a parent that's been on the sidelines but wants to kind of look at taking their first steps into coaching, and we really support them with that. And one part of that we found really beneficial is they get to have a go at delivering as well. So I remember we delivered one recently, and each coach got a go at delivering for 15 to 20 minutes. And he said that was really, really good because it gave them the confidence to actually be able to go out and do that at their clubs. But, having that opportunity to do it in an environment where it's other coaches that are supportive of them and not feeling the pressure of being watched and all those kind of things. So we do that in a couple of different ways. Sometimes we will do it like the old face-to-face level 1 course. So if anybody did that, it's where you'd kind of, in pairs, you would deliver to your peers on the course, which sometimes can be a little bit daunting, a little bit embarrassing. But I think, generally when you've got a cohort of supportive coaches, they all know that everyone's there to support and help each other. And it's a really good way of kind of, helping people to deliver their first sessions in a supportive environment. I think also when you get to be involved in those sessions as well, I think it gives you a good understanding of, what sessions are enjoyable, what do people like about them. So almost being on the other side, if you've not, if you've not played much football, or maybe you've not been involved in the coaching session for a number of years, I think, actually being involved and seeing how it feels from the other side is really good as well. So I'd say those are workshops that we run as a county. The way that we're doing that at the moment is we're kind of letting people express an interest. So there's a couple of ways we will do it. Is we will either then, if there's a particular club that says they've got a number of coaches that would be interested in running that, we can put on a club specific event. Or if we've got a number of people from a particular area that are interested, we can then do it as an open event that's across different clubs. And again, we can find different times, different areas to put those on. But yeah, those are things that we run in the county in terms of getting new coaches in. Liz, I don't know if you want to talk a bit about the Equal Game workshop and ambassadors.
Yeah, it's just a little bit more than what we've been talking about before, really. So, if anybody does need any help, Cheshire FA have kind of got me on board to go out and see people, whether it be help on do you want to get into coaching, or you want some help with setting girls' teams up, or any advice or anything like that. So quite happy to come and see people if anybody needs any help.
Perfect, that's great. Thanks, Liz. And I think the other thing we've not touched it on here, but this is probably more applicable when coaches get further into their journey. We also offer female coach mentoring as well. So that's one-to-one bespoke support with coaches that maybe want to go on and do the UEFA C, maybe on to do the UEFA B, but to kind of move up the pathways and develop their coaching. So we do have individual support available as well. The other thing as well that's at the bottom of this slide is, just being aware of the funding and bursaries that are available. So, there is opportunity for full or partial funding for coaching courses. So obviously, being able to provide that is money that you can then spend. Obviously, rather than spending it on the coaching courses, it frees up a bit of money for you to spend on, equipment or things for the club. There's also, quite often community funding available. So Barclays at the moment are offering funding and grants for female clubs, or clubs that are trying to encourage more female pathways and more female coaches. So again, just being aware of that there's financial support available as well, which you can get more information from us on. Just while we're talking about the things like funding and that, we just wanted to quickly talk about the benefits to yourselves as well of having more female coaches. So we've talked about this concept of having role models and trying to encourage more female coaches, but we also want to kind of make it clear there are sort of benefits for yourselves as clubs as well. I think the one thing for me is as soon as you open up a little bit more, you really widen out your volunteering pool. So if you're struggling to get parent coaches, looking at the female coaches, the mums that are with the club is obviously widen out the amount of people you could potentially get involved. I think also having different people involved as well, a lot of diversity in the workforce brings, different skills, different viewpoints, different experiences, different thinking, which, I like working with new coaches. Quite often I've said to them, they'll do a session and I'll pinch that because, they've got lots of fresh ideas and new thinking, which is really nice to bring from different backgrounds. I think we talked about providing role models as well and giving confidence. So again, it's that phrase we talked about, see it to be it. So, if you see other people that look like yourself doing a particular role, it gives you more confidence that you could do it. And I think the important thing as well is that, when we talk about this, again, we're not talking about, every coach has to be a female coach. We need male coaches, we need female coaches, we need diversity across the coaching workforce. I think it's recognising individual skills and individual knowledge that each person brings to give the best opportunities to our young people. I think another thing as well is that having different people for particularly young people to talk to. So whether it's male or female players, some will prefer talking to a male coach, some will prefer talking to a female coach. But again, if all the coaches we have are the same, we don't give that kind of opportunity for different perspectives and different experiences to players. So I think again, that's really important. If we think about the female game specifically, obviously girls that are starting to get towards teenage age and things like that will potentially benefit from having more female coaches that can relate to them, can understand things they're going through, and things that are happening in their lives. So again, it's just having those different perspectives and different opportunities. And I think a really good thing as well is that the opportunity to be seen as a leading club, be seen as a leader in the space within the county of trying to drive and encourage more female coaches. I think is a really important thing, and it's a real area where people can be seen as leaders in that space. So getting towards the end, and just conscious, I want to keep some time for Q&A. So, also we've talked about some of the barriers to female coaches, why they're important, and what you can do. And we'd had a look at some of the benefits. So, the next part is then to think about the next steps. And there's a few things that we like to encourage everybody that's on the call to kind of go out and do. And I think for me, one of the main things is that kind of, like we talked about, actually going out and now, can you identify potential female coaches at your club? If you can you speak to them about coaching? Ask the questions. Would you be interested in doing it? Sharing some of the things we've talked about in terms of the transferable skills and how we can get them involved in it. So that for me is a next step in terms of actually going out and identifying them. We touched on earlier about potentially having a female coach ambassador or a girls development officer within your club. So again, that's something you can think about if that doesn't exist already. That could be a committee role, so it's more formal, or it might be a more informal thing that you just have somebody that's there as the face of coaching within your club. We'll share this link that's on the screen, but one thing we'd like to do is refer coaches in for the stepping over the sideline. So whether you're a club that's thinking you would like to run that event to encourage more female coaches, or you have individual coaches at the club that would be interested, we'll encourage you to fill that form in. And then, like I say, once we get enough interest in a particular area, we'll look at putting a course on for them. We'd like to encourage your coaches at your club as well, your female coaches, to join the female coach development group. You can either do that by emailing Laura yourself, or asking the coaches to do it directly. I think sometimes, when it's via the club, it can be a little bit more accessible. But like Laura says, anybody that gets in touch with her, she can add into the WhatsApp group and onto the distribution list for that female coach development group to access future events. Like I said, we're recording this webinar, so if you found it useful, I think it'd be really great if you can share that either within your club or potentially with other clubs that you work with, to encourage them to recruit more female coaches. And we're just going to end on a couple of key points from the three people on the call today. But for me, something that really stood out when I looked at the number of coaches. So we think about the clubs just on this call today. If each club could create an opportunity for 3 more female coaches between them, that'll be an increase in the number of female coaches across the county by 10%. So I think that for me kind of sort of, really stands out that, we don't need to go and, all of a sudden have 10, 15, 20, 30 coaches at each club to make a difference. Sometimes it's just about creating those initial opportunities for a few more coaches and then building on that. So that for me was just a kind of a sort of point to finish on. Liz, would you be able to give us your kind of sort of key final point and takeaway from tonight?
Yeah, I think, as I keep concentrating about the young people that we get coming into our football clubs, and they're some of them having difficult times at school, hormones, relationships, all the rest of it. We're not there to give answers, but we're just there and we're probably easy to talk to. But also from that, they get trust in us, and then we can help them with their next steps. So I really think that, being a female coach can really make a difference to a lot of people.
Perfect. Thanks, Liz. And Laura, do you want to finish with your key point and then we can open up to Q&A?
Brilliant. I will do. I just want to stress as well, just with the female coach development group and the stepping over the sidelines and the equal game workshop, they're all completely free resources. So
Mhm.
you know, the for clubs to utilise. The reason that we've got them are for clubs and coaches to get involved and to really try and drive women's and girls football. If anyone's got any questions about any of them, just drop me a message. But yeah, my key takeaway I think is it's actually just I think it's small changes to approach that can really make a big difference and have a huge impact. I think, can you speak to those female coaches one to one? Can you maybe have a separate chat with the female coaches instead of, saying in front of all the parents who'd like to step forward? Because I think that sort of that maybe increase that barrier a little bit for them to have that confidence in front of everyone to step forward, instead of maybe having those one-to-one conversations. Can you find out what they do for a job? Are they a teacher? Do they have transferable skills? And I think it's just getting to know them, building that rapport with them, so then that jumping over that barrier and stepping over that sideline is as easy as possible for them. You guys just being on the call today just shows that you've already taken a proactive approach now, to recruiting female coaches. So I think it's just small different changes in the approach will make a huge difference, I think, to recruiting.
Perfect. Thanks, Laura. Yeah, and I think you just touched on it again. Then, we're not kind of expecting clubs to go out and do this on their own. We've got lots of support available, and we're here to work with, engage with those clubs that are keen to work with us on this as well. So again, make sure you reach out to Laura and myself. If you're not quite sure how to get started or where to go with it, and we're here to support, aren't we, Laura?
Yeah, 100%. And if anyone's got any questions, start popping them in the chat. I'm gonna stop the recording now, but before I do, I just want to say just a huge thank you to Alan and Liz as well, for putting a huge amount of effort into this webinar and for making it happen tonight. And thank you guys for joining the call. And hopefully, if you've listened to it elsewhere, hopefully you've enjoyed and took some really key things away from it. But yeah, thank you for that. I'll end the recording now.
No problem. Can we open up microphones, or will it have to just be on chat for questions?
Just on chat for questions,
Oh,
it
okay.
will.